She's back in my life and wants to rekindle a relationship. I can't let go of my resentment. Me and Adrian met in college, and we had a storybook romance. We had ups and downs in our lives, but our relationship was always wonderful, except for the last year and a half. Adrian was involved in a traumatic incident. It was a big news story of its time, so I'll be vague about it. Simply put, people died in front of her eyes, and she was physically injured as well. Blind luck was the only thing that saved her life. I wasn't with her at that time. I was supposed to be, but I got late due to work. Adrian wasn't the same after it. She had bad PTSD which manifested through anxiety attacks and deep depression. For the first 6 months after the incident she was at home. She had quit her job and her mother moved in to help out. During this period, all I did was support her. I changed my job to a much worse one because this one had spousal insurance for her treatments. I would take her to therapists and counseling sessions and sit outside. I would hold her at night when she was sobbing her eyes out. She also had a lot of irrational anger directed at me. She felt like if I had not been stuck at work, I would have saved her from the trauma in some way. I bore it without defending myself. I was the selfless super hubby that every husband thinks he'll be in moments of crisis, except I wasn't. I had lost my best friend. Adrian was a shell of herself and we didn't really talk much. Sex was non-existent except for when she would feel super horny, and half of those sessions would stop midway because she had a breakdown. Our friends and family would talk to me a lot, but it would always revolve around Adrian and her recovery. I was building up a lot of resentments, and I had no place to vent it. I hated my job. The bills were increasing every day. I was incredibly lonely and overworked, and those resentments also inspired incredible amounts of guilt. I felt like a total asshole for feeling ignored and resentful. About 10 months after the incident, Adrian was bouncing back a bit. She started a part-time job and she was smiling and happier around friends and family. They all thought she had turned a corner. She had, but our marriage had turned 12. A bad one. She was smiley and happier with everyone, but me. Our marriage needed repairing, and she wasn't ready to put in the effort that was required. I became a burden on her. We tried to go to couples therapy, but they weren't very successful. She just felt lethargic about putting into action the suggestions that the therapist gave us, and I started letting my resentment show. We started getting into passive-aggressive arguments. She felt that I didn't understand her, and I felt taken for granted. 3 months later, we had discussed divorce and it was decided that it was what was best for us, except we couldn't file until 6 months later when her insurance kicked in and she could get off my spousal policy. Those 6 months were the worst time in my life. I shared a home with my former soulmate who was slowly getting back to normal with everyone other than when I would see the glimpses of old Adrian around friends. It would break my heart because I realized I didn't inspire that anymore. Then it got worse. She met a guy at a grief counseling session whom she connected with. This guy got her and she had feelings for him. She was honest with me about it. She was also honest about her plans to explore a relationship with guy after our divorce was finalized. I told her I would figure out how to be okay with it. She promised she would not take this relationship any further until we were over. She felt guilty about it. There were enough tears to fill a tub, and she did apologize, but it still went forward, so they continued talking throughout the day, and I became bitter she would not talk to him while I was at home, but there was some texting. I would see her smiling at text she got from him. I was super bitter. I was feeling like I was getting cheated on emotionally. But logically, I wasn't. Can you cheat on a relationship that has been mutually decided to be over? Well, my feelings didn't respect that logic and I became an angry, bitter version of my former self. The divorce got finalized, and I cut her off from my life. There were still avenues of communication. Our parents are best friends. But there was no direct communication. I got a new job, a good one this time. I got into therapy. I tried my hand at another relationship. But both of us had baggage that didn't let it move forward. At least we ended on good terms. I felt like myself after 2 years of hell. 3 months back, Adrian knocked on my door. She had heard that I had broken up with my girlfriend, and she felt comfortable to tell me a lot of things that she had been wanting to tell me for a while. I let her. She read out a letter she had written, but never posted. She apologized deeply for taking me for granted. She apologized for never thanking me enough for what I did for her. She thanked me profusely for what I did for her. She apologized for wanting to divorce me at our lowest point. She apologized for starting a relationship with someone else while we were still married. She apologized for treating me like shit. She promised that she would make amends if I let her. She wanted to be back in my life as acquaintances, at least I let her. I thought I had gotten over the hurt from 2 years past to a sufficient degree. The problem was that I had not let go off my resentments. At least when I was around her, there were far too many moments where I would just feel better thinking about her. We started hanging out always in group situations. And I found myself making snide comments directed at her. It was like I couldn't control my mouth, and it also felt cathartic. I'm such an asshole. Anyways, we have had an uneasy relationship for the last 3 months. It's obvious that she's still madly in love with me. I can recognize the expression I am too, at least when the bitterness doesn't rise up. I had been thinking that we could maybe continue on this path for a while longer. I'm still not sure I want her back in my life as a romantic partner, but there might be a chance. At least till last week, I wasn't unhappy over her being. Her and our parents came over for dinner. When we were married, it used to be a fortnightly tradition. As soon as dinner was done, our parents scarpered for some party they had to go to and I wasn't told about. Adrian stuck around to help me clean up. He was set up a very transparent one, but I wasn't completely against it. So Adrian cleaned up and then she made herself comfortable on my couch and put on a movie. I sat down next to her, and we were snuggled up within seconds. It was just so natural. Then she said that she can't stand living her life without my arms around her. I reacted badly. I don't know why, but that statement opened up a valve of all my resentment. I unloaded on her, all the bitterness, all the anger, all the hatred that had piled up. She cried a lot, but never said a word. I told her to get out again. It felt cathartic until I woke up the next morning. Then I felt like shit. I texted her apologizing for the harshness. I told her that the emotion's true, but my articulation was far too blunt. She emailed me back. She said that I have every right to feel the way I do and every right to express it the way I did. She also said that she expects me to have these bio-spewing arguments more often, but that wouldn't force her away. She's gonna chase me through a live volcano if it means that I would still be in her life. She said has no pride left in herself and that she was willing to be in any degrading position as long as I was there. I don't know how to react. I'm emotionally exhausted. I know if we can manage go over these humps, we can be very happy together, maybe as happy as we were before, but I can't decide if it's worth the effort. I don't know if she'll put in the effort with a couple therapist unlike before. I don't know if we can find the solution to our heartache. What the fuck do I do? My 36 male, Y37 female confessed she wanted to leave me for another man, but she changed her decision because she fell in love with me again when I took care of her when she had cancer. Hey, guys. I've been wanting to write this for a couple of days, but I kept postponing because I didn't have the strength to type this, but I finally have enough courage to talk about it now. My wife and I have been married for 10 years. We have 2 daughters. A couple of years ago, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was a really difficult time for us, but we got through it. I did everything to support her and take care of her. I was really happy for her when she finally recovered. But last week, when my wife and I were watching a movie and cuddling, she started crying and told me that I was the best thing that happened to her, but I was in for a shock. She told me that she fell in love with one of her colleagues before her diagnosis. They didn't have any sex. But they decided to tell their families and ask for a divorce. But after her diagnosis, he ghosted her. She tried reaching out to him, but he just blocked her. That is when she realized my value in her life. She quit her previous job. I was totally unprepared for this kind of revelation. She swears that they never had any sexual intimacy. They wanted to end things with their spouses before committing. She also tells me that I'm the most important person in her life, and she'd do anything to make to me. I'm really conflicted. Like any marriage, our marriage had its share of troubles, but leaving her was never my solution. On the other hand, she tells me that our bond is stronger now. I quote to do, and I'm looking for any feasible advice. If she has my respect now, but I'm unable to function properly as a normal person now. I need help, but I don't want to talk about this.